No, I don't know why I'm holding a sword. I just felt like I needed a prop since I had a prop with the apple in the last one, and the apple doesn't really work for this one because I'm not talking about, you know, the evil queen, but I'm also not actually talking about Captain Hook in this one, who uses a sword. But I think at least someone in this video uses a sword at some point in time throughout the course of them being a villain. Stromboli, I believe, uses a sword at some point in time, and I'm going to talk about him. And there's, I think, a couple of other ones that use swords or machetes. And for anyone who thought I only had one witch's dress, you assumed wrong. Bold of you to assume that. So this is obviously going to be the other half kind of the Disney villains rankings. This is going through a bunch of the unofficial ones. So as I mentioned, Stromboli and Claude Frollo and Clayton from Tarzan and King Candy from Wreck-It Ralph and such. So I'm going to be going through those. So let me get seated for that. And I'm wearing the mini ears because I didn't have anything else that I could wear that was appropriate, and this is somewhat the right color. So, mini ears. But they're actually going to come off now because they're not exactly the most comfortable thing to wear for a long period of time. This also just shows up my lack of tan, is what this dress does. Also, is like, this proves that I have a very large lack of tan. So, moving into this. So, as I said, this is going to be the other part of the different, Disney villains and stuff like that. There's more here than on the official Disney villains list, and all of these images are sourced from the Disneypedia or Disney Wikipedia, Fandompedia, whatever it is. Link will be in the description down below if you want to look up some more about each of these ones. So, let's start with Stromboli from Pinocchio. I chose Stromboli because, like, Monstro is an animal and he's just kind of doing his instincts. And then you look at the coachman is kind of a villain as well, but he's not there as long. And then there's also, Honest John, who is not honest at all. And yes, I have seen the new Pinocchio, the new live action one with Tom Hanks and everything. And I'd say they did a pretty decent job of retelling the story. You get a little bit more backstory on, Geppetto and stuff like that, so that's nice. It was okay. I think I still somewhat prefer the original, but, it was okay. So, let's start with Stromboli in regards to where he ranks amongst the Disney villains in regards to my favorite to least favorite. And Stromboli actually kind of just goes in C. I mean, yes, he's manipulative. He tricks Pinocchio, and then he locks him in a cage and, basically threatens to, if you ever get to the point where you're useless, you're firewood, which, considering that Pinocchio is alive, is technically murder. But moving on, because I just don't really care that much for Stromboli in general, we have Lady Tremaine from Cinderella. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in my Cinderella video when I did the different Cinderella movies. The lady that voices Lady Tremaine, I believe, is also the lady that voices the evil queen from Snow White. That same lady. No. And then I think she also voices Maleficent, if I remember correctly. So she's voiced 3 Disney villains, if I remember correctly. Also, the lady that I believe voiced was like the narrator for Cinderella was also the lady that ended up voicing Cruella de Vil later on, if I'm remembering my different facts correctly on that. And I apologize if I got them wrong. Lady Tremaine, of course, she's the epitome of, the abusive stepmother in this regard. I wish some fairy tales didn't have the abusive step-parent or the abusive stepmother because, I mean, as I've stated before, my mother is technically my sister's stepmother, and she's never treated her any differently than she's treated me in regards to, treating her like a daughter. But in regards to just, Lady Tremaine goes into A tier simply just because of the fact of, she is a representation, and a lot of the ones that are on this list are much more representation of, like, real human emotions and greed coming into play. Very few of these ones have any form of, like, actual magical power beyond, the Horned King doesn't, he has magic power, and like there's some other ones that kind of like allude to power, but most of them do not have any magical power. Like as on the last list, there were very few that didn't have some form of magic, one way or the other. Scar didn't have magic. Cruella de Vil didn't have magic. Most of the other ones on that list actually have magic. Hook technically doesn't have magic, but he makes up for that for being chased around by a crocodile at 8 o'clock. So yeah, Lady Tremaine goes up here. And then we have Shere Khan from the Jungle Book. Again, and he's the only one on this, I was going to say he's the only one on this list that's an animal, but that's not true because we also have, Ratigan and then Prince John are on this list as well. So not quite the only one that's an animal. Scar was technically, I think, the only one on the other list that is actually an animal, if I'm remembering correctly from the previous list of the Disney villains, because everybody else, I believe, on that list was human. But of course, we see Shere Khan. He very much causes terror and fright throughout the course of, the movie in regards to how much everybody's just terrified of him. And of course, he's defeated by a boy with a stick that's on fire and the help of a bear and a panther. And then Tak's form of defeating him somewhat repeated within the next movie in regards to the sequel. But yeah, Shere Khan kind of goes into B. Then we have Edgar. Creme de la creme a la Edgar. Yeah, Edgar is very much the greed incarnate in regards to that. And it's just like, dude, if you just waited, you probably would have just gotten a bunch of money anyway. And it's also, the cats actually are going to need you to help take care of them. So it's not like you can't still be in charge of the fortune. So we have Idiot, who goes here. Then we have Prince John, who is very much the lazy, one of the few on this list that's actually based on a real life person. Well, no, there was a Prince John in that time frame that was during the Crusades, because Robin Hood takes place during the times of the Crusades and everything. And in the Disney movie, they very much play down the Crusade aspect of it, because it's just like, oh, the snake is like, well, I hypnotized your brother into going off to, going off to the Crusades or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, no, you don't want to explain to children what the Crusades are at that point in time. Probably not the best idea, but I still like the movie, and Prince John is still, Prince John is just not that, I don't really care for them. I like him slightly more than I like Stromboli, but not that much. Then we have Madame Medusa. Now, Madame Medusa, I think I possibly mentioned this in my Rescuers video. Madame Medusa was, trying to remember how I did this. So when Cruella de Vil was done, when they did 101 Dalmatians, and the animator that did Cruella de Vil, who I cannot remember which animator it was, I apologize, but, him and then another animator had a little bit of a rivalry, and then the other animator ended up getting to do Medusa during Rescuers. And during Rescuers was when he got to shine, and he got to do Madame Medusa and everything, and he gets, she is this very conniving, and she manipulates Penny and all this other stuff, and I just love how they kind of show that throughout the course of the movie and everything, and how she's got her 2 crocodiles that like obey her, and I'm like, how did you do that? How did you get the crocodiles to obey you? How did that work? But she goes up here because she is also very much one of the ones that I find to be quite scary in that regard, in regards to just how much I like the way that villain was done. Then we have the Horned King, from the Black Cauldron. I actually like the Black Cauldron movie, as I've stated before. I kind of wish that they'd been able to do a little bit better job with it, but I still like how the movie ended up. I know a lot of people don't really care for the Black Cauldron, and it was one of the movies that just kind of almost tanked Disney but it also kind of was one of the ones that like led into the Disney Renaissance with, that helped with The Great Mouse Detective and Oliver and Company, and then in through, the Disney Renaissance movies and everything. But the Horned King is actually extremely threatening throughout the course of that movie. And of course, nobody else on this list has an army of the dead that they end up somewhat controlling for part of the movie. Yes, it doesn't last very long, and yes, it's only near the end of the movie, but nobody else on this list can claim that as an army of the dead that they can control for, any given amount of time. Even on the last list, I don't even think there was anyone on that last list that had, the ability to, like, control the dead. Dog. I said dead, not dog. So, Horned King actually kind of goes up here in regards to not how scary I find him, but just how much I loved him as a villain. Because, he also has, like, the elegance about him and everything, and, like, him and Maleficent would have been very interesting together. Okay, so then we have Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective, who is, he's based off of Moriarty and everything from the, from the books and everything in regards to the Sherlock Holmes books, because Basil of Baker Street is based off of Sherlock Holmes and everything, and, Ratigan is, based off of Moriarty and everything, and, he successfully, he nearly, successfully kidnaps the queen and everything, and if it wasn't for, Basil showing up and defeating him and everything, Ratigan would have technically won, so he got pretty close to winning in that regard, but, in regards to how much I like him, I mean, like, he's played by Vincent Price, which adds points into that, and his song is just great and everything, and he has a giant cat that obeys him, and, he's very, very smart, and, in all honesty, Ratigan is actually extremely smart. So we're going to put Ratigan over here. Sorry, Shere Khan, you've been outmatched by a rat. Now we have, what's his name? Oliver and Company. Sikes. That's what it is, Sikes. Who's actually one of the few people in all of Disney that has actually confirmed to probably have killed a child. The other one is technically Ratigan. I think he's technically have confirmed to have killed a child, if not at least attempted to kill a child. Sikes is also kind of on that list in regards to what happens during the plot of Oliver and Company. And of course, he's like this lone shark mob boss type of thing and everything. And yet he ends up getting outsmarted by a bunch of animals and a little girl. And my necklace is off kilter again. This necklace doesn't sit very well, unfortunately. It moves too much. But I needed a necklace and the other one was too big. So yeah, Sikes, think. He actually kind of goes down here. I don't really care that much for him, but actually, no, he's going to go down here. I don't really care that much for Sikes. I mean, he is this representation of, evil in human world in regards to greed and everything, but still. Then whose villain, whose name is escaping me at the moment. Oh, frick, what's his name? I do not remember what his name is. I don't remember. He's the poacher guy from Rescuers Down Under, and I just can't remember his name, which kind of just basically tells you exactly where he goes on my list. His Joanna is actually a bit more interesting than he is, and I just don't remember his name, and I don't care. So that tells you exactly where he goes. Then we have Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. And, he's one of the ones that ends up actually full of dead by the end of his movie, because the Horned King is not dead, the Horned King, I believe, does die with the cauldron. Lady Tremaine is definitely not dead. Madame Medusa, I don't remember if she dies. Ratigan I think Ratigan actually straight up dies. Shere Khan just runs off. Prince John is trapped, is like in jail. Stromboli, we never hear from Stromboli again. Edgar gets sent to Timbuktu. Sikes, I'm pretty sure, gets arrested at some point in time. This guy, I don't know, he might die. I don't remember. Gaston definitely straight up dies. Radcliffe gets arrested. Frollo dies. Sure. God. That was just one of those things where it's just like, how many of these guys straight up die by the end of their movie? Gee. Yeah, Clayton straight up dies. Same thing with this one, this one. A lot of them end up dead. Very, very dead. Rourke. Yzma doesn't die. Okay, so I was on Gaston. So Gaston is also this representation of, you know, the golden child within the town that kind of seems to be able to do no wrong because he's, you know, he's the town hero and everything. He's, you know, the town handsome, you know, jock and everything. And okay, the guy can sing and he can do a bunch of other stuff, but he's also just a horrible, horrible person. And I'm actually going to do a different video. I think it's going to go up on Halloween that is going to be why Disney villains scare me so much and which one actually scares me the most for specific reasons. But yeah, so Gaston actually goes up here because he's one of the villains that is very much up there, very high on my list in regards to how much I like the villain. As a person, I despise him, but as a villain, I think he's a great villain. And then we have Radcliffe from Pocahontas. Rest in peace, David Ogden Stiers, who voiced him. Also voiced the Archdeacon in Hunchback of Notre Dame and Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast. Also was, you know, on MASH for a long time. So yeah, Radcliffe. Radcliffe is, as I said, one of the few ones here that is based off of, I believe, an actual person. I believe Radcliffe and Prince John, I think, are the very few on here that are actually based off of an actual person from history. You know, Radcliffe is, you know, his songs in the movie are just great, and even his songs in the second movie and the sequel, Pocahontas 2, you know, Journey to a New World, is also just very much, his songs are great and I love them. And it's just like, let's just let David Ogden Stiers sing because he can do that amazingly. Yes, he can, and he did a wonderful job. And I love the Radcliffe villain. I love him as the villain. He's great. He gets his comeuppance at the end of the first movie and again at the second movie, so that's good. Then we have Frollo. And Frollo is obviously this example of the person with political power that has been able to, you know, kind of subjugate an entire city in regards to being able to, you know, subjugate the gypsies and anybody else in the city, including his own technically adopted son. And only sees Quasimodo as something that could be useful to him in the future. And that's the only reason that he, you know, agrees to raise him and everything. One of the only reasons beyond his own guilt. That is this brief glimpse of guilt that we get with him. And then he ends up falling into a fiery pit, you know, of molten steel or whatever it is that he falls into off the top of Notre Dame, which is funny and very poetic. Then we have Shanu, who is, of course, from Mulan. He's not exactly based on a real-life person. He's based off of, I believe, an amalgamation of several different leaders of the Huns and stuff like that, and, you know, leaders of, like, people who had been, like, opposition to China and stuff like that over the course of several dynasties, if I remember correctly. So I don't think he's ever based off of actually one specific person. But, you know, he is very strong, you know, he's very, I actually say he's quite capable in regards to, you know, his planning on how to get to the emperor and everything, because a lot of that, he's very smart in that regard. And he actually gets to go up here in regards to where I see him in my ranks as a villain. Then we have Clayton. And Clayton is obviously, again, and, you know, you know, a form of greed showing up, a form of, you know, might makes right to a degree. That's also kind of what Frollo kind of stands for, as does Gaston and everything. And both of them are from France. Technically, Cinderella, I think, also somewhat takes place in France in regards to how they're portraying the fairy tale, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. And then, yeah, for Clayton, Tarzan, you know, we have, you know, at the beginning of this movie, we have the leopard, we have Sabor, and then, you know, Sabor ends up, you know, I love how they do this because it's, you know, Tarzan defeats Sabor to protect his, you know, troop of gorillas, and then, you know, Clayton shows up and he had his shirt is the same color yellow as Sabor's, you know, pelt. And it's this representation of like one villain is gone, but now you have to deal with a worse villain, a smarter villain, a villain that has a gun. And very few of the Disney villains that actually has a straight up gun. I mean, like Radcliffe has a gun at one point in time in the movie, and you know, so does Gaston because he's a hunter. I think Ratigan at some point has a gun, but most of the other ones, I mean, this guy has a gun, and I'm pretty sure Sykes has a gun, but not many of the other ones on the list do. Um, uh, he's got a gun. I know that, but I don't think any of the other ones actually have guns. But Clayton gets to go here. Then we have Yzma, rest in peace, the late, great, amazing Eartha Kitt. I love Yzma. She's great. I love her as a villain. She is one of my favorite villains. Go over here. Nope. No. There we go. Stop that. There we go. Yzma is great. I love her as a villain. I actually really, really love Emperor's New Groove because it's just so funny. And no, it's not meant to be serious by any means, beyond a few small bits here and there. But, you know, love Yzma. Pull the lever, Kronk. Love Yzma. Rest in peace, Eartha Kitt. Then we have Rourke from Atlantis, The Lost Empire. I didn't really throw any of the villains in from the second movie because none of them are nearly as threatening, in my opinion, as Rourke. Yes, one of them almost causes Ragnarok in the third part of the movie, but Rourke hit me as much more threatening because at the time frame, because the movie takes place in like, I think like 1918, I want to say, in like the very, you know, very late 1910s and the 1920s, if I remember correctly, is when the first movie takes place for Atlantis. And with Rourke, he is this, you know, example of, you know, someone who was, you know, an explorer at the time who, you know, was there to, and this is something that's coming up quite a bit in media right now and in regards to the news and, you know, culture right now in regards to, you know, going to different places and like, you know, taking artifacts and everything, you know, during colonization and a bunch of this other stuff, you know, where they would, you know, take the artifacts away and everything during acquisition of different things just to go and attack different, you know, regions just to get a hold of their artifacts so they can claim, oh, we can take better care of them. Admittedly, in Rourke's mind, at the beginning of it, he thinks that there's not going to be anybody alive in Atlantis. And then even by the time that they do find out that there's people there, Rourke doesn't care. And then, of course, he's very much the example of, well, I'll sell whatever I get to the highest bidder, which is his intention with the crystal that now Kida, you know, that Kida now possesses and everything. And of course, he ends up just straight up dying by the end of the movie. But I find he's what Clayton probably would have turned into, in all honesty. I'm trying to remember the time frame for when Tarzan is supposed to take place. I don't quite think they take place at the same time, but I wouldn't say that they're too far off from each other in that regard. Not that that makes a huge difference, but still, just things that pop into my head. Then we have Mother Gothel, who is, and right now my mom and I are watching through Once Upon a Time, and right now the villain in that one right now in the last season is very much Mother Gothel and everything. So, you know, so I'm seeing some of this other side of her that they put into that. But, you know, the Mother Gothel that we see in Tangled with Rapunzel, with, you know, the story about the flower, and then she goes and kidnaps the baby and everything, and she raises Rapunzel, could have saved herself so many problems by just, you know, not telling Rapunzel the correct date for her birthday. Just make it like 6 months later or something like that. It's not a problem. Rapunzel won't know. Saved herself so many problems there. But, you know, we have that. We have how, you know, how it's, you know, she will show affection to Rapunzel in regards to her hair specifically, as opposed to Rapunzel herself. We see that. We see how manipulative it is. I've seen several videos online that are very much how basically Mother Gothel gaslights Rapunzel the entire freaking movie, which is very true. You know, the way that that goes. So yeah, Rapunzel, you know, Mother Gothel and everything, you know, she's willing to, you know, she stabs Flynn and everything, and she's going to kidnap Rapunzel again and take her away and everything. And Mother Gothel is just great. And of course the song Mother Knows Best is just great. It's another song that was written by Alan Menken. Same thing with Ursula's song, you know, with Poor Unfortunate Souls from The Little Mermaid and everything, and a bunch of other songs and everything like that from, you know, the Disney Renaissance age. Not that Rapunzel is from the Disney Renaissance age, that came about a good almost 10 years later, but still, it's Alan Menken's music and I still love it. Then we have King Candy / Turbo. Oh god. So I love Wreck-It Ralph for many different reasons. I love the sequel. And I didn't put the sequel villain in here because the sequel villain is technically kind of Ralph-ish / the virus. So I didn't want to put that in here because, you know, it's Ralph's insecurity that is the problem in the sequel. In the first movie, it is straight up King Candy is the villain. We learn this. Find out that he's Turbo and that he's actually been trying to manipulate, you know, Candy Rush and everything and been rather successful at it. He's one of the few villains in this that was actually rather successful. Although I would say that the one on this list that was probably the most successful in regards to how long they actually kept their scheme going was Frollo. Because like he rules over Paris for like over 20 years as like, you know, as the judge and everything. But I'll be going over Frollo in the why Disney villains scare me so much video. So yeah, King Candy, but I don't find him nearly as threatening as some of the other ones until he turns into the giant candy bug death thingy that he turns into in the last part of the movie and everything. And then he gets messed up by Mentos and Cola, which is just funny. So yeah, as I said, these three here, I think Ratigan too, are like 4 of the ones that like actually straight up die by the end of their movie. Same thing with Mother Gothel. Shawn Hu also is straight up dead by the end of his movie. Same thing with Gaston, as I said. Then we have Hans from Frozen. And Hans was kind of one of the first ones. I mean, like, King Candy was a little bit of like this turn of a villain that they did, but you can still kind of like see it partway through the movie. With Hans, you know, throughout the course of Frozen, it's, you know, you don't find out that Hans is like actually the villain until pretty close to the end, when he, you know, finally, you know, reveals to Anna that he's the villain and everything. And, you know, it's like, you know, wouldn't it be nice if somebody, you know, loved you too and whatever, and, you know, leaves her to freeze so he can take over Arendelle. And, you know, we see that with Hans and everything. And, you know, at the beginning of the movie, I completely understand why Elsa is like, you can't marry a man you just met and everything, which I love that, because it's like, that's, you know, like what so many of the original Disney movies were based off of like, you know, Snow White and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty and even Little Mermaid and everything. We're just like, you can't marry a man you just met. And in all those cases, they technically marry a man they just met. In many different ways. At least with Beauty and the Beast, they're around each other for a little while. No, Stockholm Syndrome is not actually what happens with Beauty and the Beast. There's other videos I've seen online that go over that, and I'm just like, yeah, no, that's not Stockholm. The way that they explain it with an actual therapist is like, no, that's not what Stockholm Syndrome is. Yes, Beast shouldn't have kidnapped her in the first place, but, you know, it shifts around. But in regards to Hans and everything, I mean, it's like, you know, he gives off the vibe of actually caring about the people of Arendelle, and until you get to the point where he actually, you know, reveals to Anna that he's the bad guy, and even when he has Elsa locked up in the basement, you know, chained and everything, you know, there's you start to see a glimpse of it, a glimmer of him being the villain. But I still like how that was like kind of Disney's one of their more initial stabs at doing like a twist villain, because like most of the rest of these ones that you see pretty much get set up straight off as the villain pretty quickly to being introduced to them one way or the other, or it's very blatant that they're going to become the villain in regards to like Clayton and everything. Rourke is a little bit of those other ones that is a little bit more of like there can be like a twist in there as well. But we still kind of get like a glimpse of it partway through the movie when they first discover Atlantis. So there's hints laid there. But yeah, Hans, where I like him a little bit more than I like King Candy. Then we have the Doctor slash yokai from, Big Hero 6, Dr. Callahan slash yokai, and yokai is because of the mask and everything is what he's called. And he is another one of those villains that, like, at the beginning of the movie, you think that he dies when, everything happens with the fire and everything, and then he lives, and then he ends up being the one that, is yokai, and, he's the main villain of the movie. And by the end of the movie, or partway through the movie, once you find out about his motivation, he's one of the villains that you actually get a little bit more of like where their motivation comes from. With Hans, it's because, oh, my brothers were mean to me and pretended I didn't exist. With King Candy, it's he's supposed to be the greatest racer in the world. With Ratican, he's just straight up evil. With the Doctor, with Dr. Callahan, his daughter was taken from him by this experiment that should have had more safety precautions. And now he thinks that she's dead. And, he tried to move on, but then he got this chance to try to find a way to, get his revenge. And we see that throughout the course of the movie. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, he at least just wants to make sure that his daughter's okay. And then, he still gets, arrested and everything. I have yet to watch the new Baymax series that's on Disney Plus. I will at some point in time. I just haven't yet. And I have no idea if they bring back Dr. Callahan at some point in time as like, oh, he's still in prison and everything, but they go and talk to him about something because maybe there's something that comes up. I don't know. If not, that would be a decent plot for an episode if they don't have that planned already, but I don't know. But yeah, he's kind of one of the other ones that has a little bit of this twist that happens. But I actually like him. He can go here. Then we have Assistant Mayor / Mayor Bellwether from Zootopia, who is very much one of the ones that was this twist on the villain. Because you also see, I don't have anything from Encanto here either, because Encanto doesn't have a straight up villain. Same thing with, I might do a video at some point in time where I do like rank the different Pixar villains, but there's not quite as many villains in Pixar. There's a few, because there's, Syndrome and a few other ones here and there that pop up, but there's not nearly as many as there is when it comes to, the Disney villains and everything. And some of those I may have to double up on if I end up doing a Pixar video, but that's probably not going to happen until like maybe next year or something if I end up doing a Pixar villain rankings video at some point. We'll see. But Assistant Mayor Bellwether is one of these ones that it goes from, you think that she's kind of an ally, and actually in the beginning of the movie and, partway all the way, most of the way through the movie until the end that it's revealed that she is the bad guy, she is an ally to Judy. She helps Judy in regards to letting her look at the traffic cams and everything and, a bunch of this other stuff. And she wants Judy to be, the face of, the ZPPD. And we see that and everything. But we find out that that is just entirely her plot in order to be able to, frame the mayor and then, get it that all the different, prey in the city are on her side so that way she can stay in power. And it is kind of a little bit of this, bigotry coming into ways. Which Zootopia is a very interesting look at that type of stuff and stereotypes and everything. Again, there's videos I've watched that talk about that a lot, do a really good job about that, and I really like that. But, Mayor Bellwether, and she's revealed at the end, right near the end, that she's the one that's actually been the villain the whole time, and she, of course, monologues her whole plan. You got me monologuing! Bellwether actually kind of goes here. In regard to the fact that she's one of those twist villains that I love that Disney is like trying to do now. Doesn't mean that every movie has to have like a twist villain in it that was like, oh god, this person we thought was our ally and now they're bad. other things can be the villain, which is where we land on our last one, which is the Droon from Raya and the Last Dragon. And, you know, Raya was made during, COVID and everything. So I'm pretty sure that some parts of like kind of representation of COVID was put into Droon and everything, along with a whole bunch of other things that were going on at the time frame that happened during COVID and everything, during lockdown and all this stuff. And, the Droon was kind of this representation of that from what Disney could do with it at the time. And, the Droon is this, to a degree faceless. It's just like this purple mist light stuff that goes around and turns living creatures into stone. We see that throughout the course of the movie. We get the whole backstory with the Droon and the dragons and everything. And then, the Droon returns because humanity ends up fighting against each other and everything. There's these squabbles that happen, which results in, the Droon being able to return. And then they just cause more problems over the course of the next, 6 years or whatever it is. And we see a bunch of that with the Droon. And yes, there is that scary thing of just like this thing can just like in an instant take your entire family away from you. We see that shown throughout the course of several different, through a lot of the characters in the movie, a lot of the main cast, particularly with Raya and her father. But then there's also the baby and her parents, and, the boy on the boat, who I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. His whole family was taken from him, with the the one that's from the north, his whole village, his whole tribe was taken from him by the Droon. And, and we see that and everything. And, throughout the, we see with how horrible the Droon is in this regard. And it is, as I said, it's this faceless monster that has no emotion. It just destroys because it feeds off of human hate. It feeds off of human squabble and such. And that's, that's the way that Suzu explains it. That's the way that this thing grows. The more of that there is in the world, the more hatred and the more, fear of each other, of the other there is in the world, the more the Droon will grow and the stronger it will become, and it will take everything away from you. And then it will take away you, because we see that happen. And the only way they're able to beat it is by, having Namaari being the one to like combine all of the crystals together, because it's these representations of the other tribes putting their trust in Namaari, and she's able to succeed. And yes, she gets turned to stone too, but it's this representation of putting your last bit of faith in this moment and then even surrendering yourself to it to try to see if you can fix it. That proves that the Droon can be defeated. And that's what, frees everybody and brings back the dragons and everything, and makes, reconfirms, reforms Kumandra that we see throughout the, at the end of the movie. And I love how they do that. And, the Droon is just one of those things that just, it represents so much. And, like, that's why it goes on top, in my opinion, as, like, in my opinion, my favorite Disney villain, because it can take aspects of all of these other villains. Greed, hatred, jealousy, manipulation, just straight up evil, hatred, whatever you want to go with. And the Droon is this embodiment of everything put together in regards to, this is why, all of this put together formed the Droon. And then the Droon causes all of these problems in humanity. No, it's not the reason that we're all, that humanity has these problems that it has to deal with, but it is a side effect of it that then just perpetuates stuff even more. And yeah, was not expecting to go on that explanation there. Sorry, wasn't expecting that. Didn't plan that. But, I love how they do that. I love how they show that with the Droon, and how each one of these different villains, within the right of their own film, is rather threatening. And this is just the order in regards to which ones I like the best. And I just, you know, everybody has like their own opinions for like which ones they think are the scariest, which ones they think are the best or the worst or their favorites, and that's perfectly fine. But this is the way that I see it in regards to which ones I like the best. You know, my favorite down to my least favorite. And the Droon is only at the top because it is this amalgamation of like everything else that the others all represent. So that's what we have there. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed the video, and happy Halloween. Bye.